bad guys are after you again. Don't they ever take a day off? And your rooftop chase is about to come to an end. Time to assess your options. Should you try and talk it through with your would-be assassins, or take your chances with fall damage? There's a roof terrace 20 meters down, or a pool of water 30 meters down. What offers the best chance of escape? Water is certainly a softer landing than a solid surface, but it isn't a magic cushion that allows a person to survive any fall unscathed. Impacting water at high speeds can cause you serious harm. So, at what height does a fall into water feel like hitting concrete?
I'm Stu, this is Debunked, and we're here to sort the truths and the myths, and the facts from the misconceptions.
Assuming you're not falling into a boiling geyser or fast-flowing rapids, it's obvious to say that falling into water is generally much safer than falling onto hard ground or concrete. So obvious that you regularly see it appear in media like films and video games, as a matter of common sense. Here, Ryan Gosling's hero survives a fall from a high rooftop by landing in a pool, while the bad guy simultaneously splats deadly on the paved ground beside him. In this scene, John Cena ticks off a whole handful of movie tropes in one go, by jumping out of an exploding helicopter with his girlfriend in hand into a rooftop pool. And in everyone's favourite block-building video game, Minecraft, a common trick to survive fall damage is to simply place a bucket of water beneath you just before you hit the ground. While the fall-breaking capabilities of a bucket of water are clearly exaggerated, the point is that the force of impact into a liquid substance, like water, is naturally far less than a similar fall onto a solid surface, such as the ground. The reason why is because liquids, like gases, are fluids, meaning their molecules can freely flow and move around, and can be pushed out of the way or displaced when something makes contact with it. This is not the case with hard solids, as they cannot be displaced or deformed by something as soft and mushy as the human body. When a person falls onto the ground, at the moment of impact, all the parts of your body that make contact with the floor are prevented from moving any further. But for a split second afterwards, the rest of your body simply keeps going, essentially slamming into itself with great force. At sufficiently high speeds, easily achievable even from relatively modest heights, this results in significant damage to the body, and frequently death. If you didn't know already, falls from height onto hard surfaces, usually the ground, are one of the most common causes of accidental deaths worldwide. Ergo, it is specifically the rapid deceleration that occurs when your fall is stopped that causes damage to your body. Solid surfaces resist the impact and stop you moving almost immediately, crushing you under your own weight. Regardless of the surface you impact, Newton's second law of motion applies. This law tells us that the impact force is equal to the change in momentum over time. Once the object comes to rest, its momentum is zero. So the force depends only on the momentum just before impact and the time it takes to come to rest. When you fall into liquids like water, you continue moving by displacing the water molecules, and, therefore, decelerate more slowly over a longer period of time. This means that in a literal sense, falling into liquid water will never actually be the same as falling onto a hard, solid surface. It's not possible for water to produce the same level of impact forces as a similar fall onto concrete, because water moves out of the way. Concrete doesn't.
But can falling into water feel like falling into concrete in a less literal sense? That is to say, can falling into water hurt you or even kill you? Absolutely.
Before we learn about the physics behind it all, we'd like to introduce you to BetterHelp, the paid partner of today's video.
I am an advocate for mental health and believe that if you're experiencing a particularly difficult time, you shouldn't be left to deal with it on your own.
The problem is, it can be very hard to take that first step to seek help. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that makes it as easy as possible to get you started on the right path so that you can access help. I have dealt with more life tragedies over these last few years than I care to have experienced, and it took its toll on me to say the least. Without support from a mental health professional, I would not be in as good a place as I am now. It can sometimes help just to talk out loud to an impartial ear that can then offer guidance or just help you balance your thoughts. But beyond that, a mental health professional can provide you with the tools to help you navigate through life when you're experiencing a particularly difficult time. BetterHelp allows you and your therapist to communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. No matter your background or situation, you'll be able to find a professional who you can speak with comfortably. And if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit for you, you can easily switch to one until you find someone that you really connect with. All therapists on the platform are qualified, and with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust.
So if you think you'd benefit from a therapy session, then think about giving BetterHelp a try. You can click on the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/debunked and you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy. Let BetterHelp connect you with a therapist from the comfort of your own home. Right, let's learn about some physics.
Though liquids and gases are both fluids, liquids are far more comparable to solids when it comes to density. Gas particles have lots of space between them, but while liquid particles have enough space to move around and readily flow, the particles in both solid and liquid substances have very little space between them. Though there are exceptions, generally speaking, liquids are usually only slightly less dense than solids. Because liquids are only slightly more compressible than solids, when you hit water at a high speed, it does not allow the water to be displaced quickly enough. The water therefore resists the impact to a far greater extent than if you'd entered the water more slowly, and it behaves much more like a solid surface would. Interestingly enough, under enough pressure, water can be hypothetically compressed into a solid, a crystallized structure known as ice 6. All this means that falling into water from high enough up, and so at a high enough velocity, can definitely hurt you.
If that's a 200-foot dud, he can't make it and live.
Much like falling into concrete. It generally won't be as bad as falling onto solid ground, of course, but falling into water fast enough can cause some serious damage.
He made it! He made it!
Indeed, it's not even particularly uncommon. There are numerous cases of divers, especially high divers, who have injured themselves quite badly upon hitting the water's surface. Famous examples include a 1987 attempt by Olivia Favre at a double-back somersault from 54 meters or 177 feet up. Upon hitting the water, the impact broke Favre's back, and he had to be rescued with an inflatable stretcher.
So, at what height does falling into water start to become potentially lethal?
Well, it's hard to say, and really depends on the specifics of the fall. Whether a fall into water will kill you depends on many different things. Aside from speed, perhaps the most important of these is the orientation of your body at impact. In 2015, Brazilian Swiss canyoner and cliff jumper Lasso Schaller set the world record for the highest cliff jump into water when he dropped an incredible 58.8 meters, nearly 193 feet, down from a cliff into a waterfall plunge pool at Cascata del Salto in Switzerland. The fall took 3.58 seconds, and Schaller reached 123 kilometers per hour, that's 76.4 miles per hour, before impacting the water's surface. Schaller opted for a pencil dive approach, meaning he hit the water feet first in a vertical position. This allowed him to cut through the water without significantly displacing it, penetrating deep down and decelerating over a relatively long period of time and consequently reducing the impact. Excluding freestyle high diving, like death diving, where competitors jump with their arms stretched out belly first before landing in a pike position or cannonball position, a feet-first vertical entry is usually opted for throughout high diving to avoid injury. Landing in a flat, horizontal position has the exact opposite effect. By increasing the surface area of your body upon impact, more water needs to be immediately displaced, which increases the resistive force of the water, decelerating you much more quickly. This essentially translates to blunt force trauma, and can result in significant injuries and even death. In early 2024, stuntman and experienced cliff diver Kevin Kawati made a miscalculation when attempting a reverse triple flip from 32 meters, that's 106 feet. Kawati landed back first, resulting in a collapsed lung and lacerated ear. The position of your body upon impact is also significant because some parts of your body are more vital than others. You're far more likely to sustain life-threatening injuries if you land on your head compared to landing on your feet. If you fall into water and the impact is concentrated on a fragile area, the result could be fatal. A broken neck can easily kill you.
Because the survivability of a fall depends on more than just height and speed alone, it's not really possible to pin down a specific height at which falls immediately become dangerous.
However, broad analysis can give us a general idea. And as it happens, this has actually attracted some scientific interest. Statistical investigations into the height of fatal falls onto the ground have found that 50% of people die after falling from heights of 15 meters. And even though there are truly exceptional cases of people surviving falls from the top of skyscrapers and even out of planes, falls from around 25 to 30 meters and up are generally speaking unsurvivable.
People who fall into water tend to fare a bit better.
One study from 1973 investigated people who fell from bridges, one in the United States and two in Australia, and found that the lethal dose 50, i.e. the height at which 50% of people survive, occurs at 33.5 meters. That's just under 110 feet. Another study conducted by the United States Federal Aviation Agency in 1965 concluded that speed, and therefore height, actually had zero effect on mortality rates, stating the following.
No correlation between velocity, or distance of fall, and degree of trauma was found. Rather, injuries appeared to be more dependent upon body position at all levels of force. Severe injuries and fatalities occurred at low levels of velocity, while some cases of minimal or no injury occurred at very high impact velocities.
More recently, in 2022, scientists at Cornell University in New York conducted an experiment using human models in various dive positions in order to study how falling into water can cause injury. The models allowed the scientists to effectively test the heights at which
the slamming force exceeds the critical compressive strength of muscles, ligaments, or bones.
The results of the investigation showed when diving feet first into water, the human body is able to safely withstand impact up to around 15 meters. That's about 4.5 stories high. That height is reduced to 12 meters when diving in hands first, which is around 3.5 stories, or the height of your average telephone pole. Meaning heights like this wouldn't see our heroine coolly swim and slink away from her would-be captors. This height drops further still to only 8 meters when hitting the water head-on, which is around the roof height of a 2-story house. The study noted that hands and head-first dives risk trauma to the upper torso, particularly the cervical spine and collarbone. Ultimately, we can safely conclude that falling into water gets more and more dangerous the higher up you fall from, as increased height translates to higher velocity upon impact and greater resistance from the water. However, while heights of over 30 meters represent substantial risk of injury when falling into water, the evidence suggests that the position of your body is actually the most important factor in whether or not you're likely to get hurt, or even survive. While we do have incredible feats recorded by people like Lasso Shaller, these aren't the same as real-world falls. World record attempts are strictly supervised, meticulously planned, and performed by people who know exactly how to land. But even then, things don't always go to plan. In the specific case of Lasso Shaller's jump, the pool was aerated from beneath by 6 tanks. Aerating water releases bubbles that lowers its density and makes it softer, thus reducing the impact on the diver when they hit the surface, a safety technique that can be used during high dive practice. And despite this, and with months of training on his side, Shaller slightly overshot the landing spot, causing injury to his leg and hip. In real-world situations, falls into water from heights of around 70 meters (225 feet) result in nearly 100% fatalities.
From 225 feet high, and after a 4-second fall, a person would hit the water at a speed of 75 miles per hour, with a force equivalent to a lorry crashing into a wall.
Of the 2% that do survive the initial impact from this height, the vast majority of them black out as they collide with the water, which obviously isn't helpful for your survival. Other than the very few that stay awake for the entire experience, most survivors then wake up on the deck of a rescue boat. But orientation is key whether the fall or jump is under controlled conditions or not. One survivor from this height landed feet first and even managed to avoid breaking any bones. However, they suffered severe bruising to their lungs, with one collapsing that left them in intensive care with a 50% chance of survival.
One thing we haven't touched upon yet is water depth.
The height you fall from, your body position, and your speed on entry each have a direct effect on how deep you go once you enter the body of water. If the water is too shallow, you'll make contact with the bottom and likely encounter injuries, or in some cases, death. This is another reason to ensure you enter the water feet first. A large number of cliff dive fatalities have been caused by head and neck injuries as the diver strikes the bottom or an object below the water's surface. The recommended safe dive depth for high diving competition pools, where the diver jumps from as high as 27 meters, nearly 90 feet, is an absolute minimum of 5 meters, about 17 feet. For comparison, the pool Lasso Shallow landed in, after falling nearly 60 meters, or 185 feet, was approximately 8 meters, or 26 feet deep. Interestingly though, we can take a look at the modelling put together by physicists Salim Rootli and Timothy Gallagher over on the Physics Stack Exchange on this very topic. Their estimates show that the depth penetrated by a human entering feet first into the water doesn't increase proportionally to the height they jump from. If we continue to use mathematical modelling and extrapolate these results, we can produce estimates for depths achieved from differing heights. For example, if we took an average height and weight American male and jumped them from 3 meters high, they would reach a depth of 3.1 meters into the water. If we jumped them from 10 meters, they would reach a depth of 3.5 meters. If we extrapolate these results and jumped our hypothetical average American from the world record height of 60 meters, nearly 200 feet, they are estimated to only reach a depth of roughly 5 meters, around 17 foot. Remember, this is only mathematical modeling, but this depth appears to be approaching the limit of how deep your average human would reach, even if they achieved terminal velocity before entry. So, if you happen to find yourself plummeting towards an appropriately deep body of water, the science says that shortly before entry, you need to get into a feet-first pencil dive position. If you're falling from 15 meters, just under 50 feet above the water, you should be able to swim away from your ordeal unscathed. If you're falling from 30 meters, or slightly less than 100 feet, you can survive, but are likely to sustain injuries. Shortly after this height, at 33.5 meters, around 110 feet, you have a roughly 50-50 chance of survival. If you're falling from more than double that height, at around 70 meters or 225 feet, you're going to have to be almost impossibly lucky to survive plummeting into water from such a great height. Stay safe, folks. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our paid partner. If you feel like you'd benefit from a therapy session, then please check out BetterHelp using the link in the description. Be kind to yourself, and we'll see you next time.